different aspects. So one, it is just trying to understand how collective capabilities are essential for sustainable human development. So surely it is trying to argue that it has the intrinsic importance of collective capabilities if you want to achieve sustainable development, and that is one aspect. The other aspect is trying to highlight is about the agency. So
Yes.
it is just trying to tell us like if you want to create an environment where we do have uh, entire what I would say is the like environment where like people will feel empowered. So for that purpose, then agency is important. And then obviously, as we had discussed earlier as well, it discussed about two types of agency: direct agency and indirect agency. And then also like
Right.
discussing importance of both these agency. So it was all about that particular article. And then I consider it's really important from our perspective, because we are in the development sector. We are always in the process of designing programs, projects for the human development. And then specifically sustainability aspects are always there. We want to understand how sustainability will be maintained when we are working for the human development. And then those aspects become essential, become crucial when we are designing something for the for somebody coming from the underprivileged section. Then it become even more crucial. Even though in this specific article, sustainability is looked from the natural resources perspective, from the environmental perspective, but sustainability I look at from the larger perspective, where like I consider whatever efforts we are putting, if we just want to sustain those efforts, then for that purpose as well, I consider a sustainability perspective is really important. So in this, like we'll take a reference of that particular article, but that is not all we are going to discuss. Our main agenda for today is to understand the relationship between collective capabilities and sustainable human development. We'll just try to very briefly understand about human development initially. Then we'll come to what is our role as the policy designer, as the development sector professionals, or what is role of state. We'll just try to understand that, and then slowly we will understand about the agencies. And then we may close with one important argument which this particular article is trying to make. So this is about reading. But before going ahead, I guess Vinod sir has also joined, and then Shrey is also there. So before going ahead, I just want to understand from them like what they feel about that particular article. What are their views? So did you got chance to go through it, Khilekar sir and Shreya?
Hello,
Yeah.
I'm audible,
Yes,
right?
yes, you are audible.
Okay, okay. So yeah, I had read the article,
Mhm,
and it's a uh, it's a good explanatory article, as in it tries to explain the importance and significance of uh,
mhm,
groups, and the impact that they have on individual being, as well as the society and government, and when is it actually needed, like when
mhm,
the government fails to uh, accomplish its duties. Only then
mhm.
we should aim for this sort of that.
Correct, correct. Yes, we'll slowly discuss and we'll try to unfold all the arguments in that particular article. But agenda is just not to understand the article, but to take that as a base to discuss how we should design program, and then rather we'll be doing that exercise today. So let's quickly start our discussion on sustainable human development. So, what are your perspectives? So, can you share like what are your thoughts about that? What are your perspectives about human development? How do you treat this particular aspect? Um, how do you operationalize sustainable development? Have you worked on any project, or have you given thought during any of your design earlier? what basically is sustainable human development for you?
Hi. Uh, so yeah, sustainable, as the word means, it should be it should be able to sustain over a prolonged period of time, right? So human
Mhm,
development or human progress as a society, as we see it should be able to exist for a
mhm,
longer period of time than
mhm,
the current scenario, right? So sustainable means any development that takes in consideration the needs of the current generation as well as the on incoming generation,
mhm,
and
mhm,
and all the actions or all the policies or all the decision making, they are made with respect to these two generations, the current generation as well as the future generation. That is what I feel is sustainable development.
yes, yes, very much. Like this is one of the perspective, but I do have some critical aspect to discuss here. In the sense, like, can we really have some development which is sustainable in that sense? Because ultimately, when we talk about development, it is all about consuming natural resources. Ultimately, some or the other way, we are consuming natural resources. So it could be for anything. Let's say a very simplistic example that, like, I want to make sure that every individual have basic needs, in the sense food, clothing, okay, at least, and shelter might be. So if these basic needs I want to provide, I will be drawing something from the nature. And then if I'm drawing something from nature, then it's very obvious that I cannot restore nature to that level again. Okay, I can try my best for sure, but I will never be able to achieve that. Let's take one particular case. Let's say I want to uh, just build my house using the woods out there. So I cut jungles, okay, and then whatever trees I cut, those are there in that particular jungle for 90 years. It could be hundreds of years out there, right? Now, if that is the situation, that is the scenario, and then if I cut it, and then if I decide to replant the trees, even then I won't be able to restore it to this its original position. It's not possible, right? So, is there any kind of sustainability possible? Can we really achieve sustainable development, or is it just in papers?
Difficult, as you said, but because all of the natural resources that we have been using, they have taken
Mm-hmm,
millions of years to form. So
mm-hmm,
to hoping for them to regenerate while we use them is sort of not
mm-hmm,
logical. So
mm-hmm.
we have to find alternate sources of energy.
Right? Yes. Very much. People discuss about alternative sources as well, but I do have doubts about that as well. Like, when somebody says that we are using alternative sources, I don't see that we are actually using alternative sources. In the sense, like, let's assume solar energy, for example. Now, there are enough example. There are a lot of researches which says that even if we are using solar energy, there are like so many energy consumption which happen beforehand, because ultimately you need solar panels to consume solar energy. Okay, you need to store it somewhere. We need batteries for that purpose. Okay, so ultimately we consume, okay, energy beforehand. We might not be consuming it throughout, but like even before starting a use of alternative resources, we do consume a lot of natural resources already. And then people say, they are shown, they are like proved the mathematics and economics that uh, it is not sustainable in that sense. It's anyways a negative source of energy, in the sense like whatever the conversion we are doing from natural resources, before that we already consumed it to such an extent that it is actually proving as a negative source. Okay, so that is also doubtful.
Yeah, that's true actually, because whatever manufacturing that we have done, they do require conventional sources of energy only. That's right. It's not a completely zero carbon footprint, but it's lesser than before to some
Right,
extent.
right, perfect. Yes. So I consider like you used a very good terminology, that is carbon footprint. If we decide to consider that as one of the parameters, then if you go and then start measuring things, then you figure out that there are always we will end up on the negative side. There will be like a lot of consumptions we are doing. So ultimately, development of any sort, whether it can be sustainable, is always doubtful. We never know whether like we are really in position to achieve the sustainability with it. And then if that is a scenario, then how to define sustainability, what aspect to consider and what aspect to ignore, become a major challenge. Whether we should treat them really as a sustainable development or not, that really become challenge in that sense. And then apart from national resource, there are other aspects as well. So other aspect would be that about the duration for which we are treating this sustainability. In the sense, people may say that I am not considering the longer time span. In the sense, I am not treating it for the 500 years before consuming natural resources, and then I'm also not interested in understanding what happened after 500 years. I may just reduce the time span, and then that may simplify the things. So I can just try to see what was the situation when I consume natural resources, and then I'll just try to see that if I can just restore it for coming 2, 3, 4, 5, or might be 10 years. And then if we reduce the duration, then people might be in position to at least give some justifying reasoning to things they are doing. And that is exactly what we do nowadays when we discuss about sustainability. That we just change the perspective, we reduce the time span, we reduce the geographies, okay, and then within that we just try to think about sustainable development. So for example, if I'm doing something, let's say I just want to drop my garbage in ocean, then I may give a local treatment. I will just give a treatment uh, on the banks which are very closer to my territory, and then I won't give thought on what is happening at the larger level. Will it affect any other countries or people living after crossing 7 seas, for example? Okay, I might not be giving thought to that extent. So basically, then sustainability is about restricting our vision. It is just thinking about certain limited geographies, time span, and limited people. Sorry. So this is just one aspect. There are a lot of other critiques which people make about sustainable development. But let's try to understand a few aspects of sustainable development before discussing it further. What people have to say about it. So these are a couple of definitions of sustainable development. Obviously, these are simplified or just one perspective to look towards sustainable development. There are various other perspectives, but during this particular discussion, I thought this might be sufficient. So I just putting these two particular definitions over here. So what sustainable development is? It's about organizing principle for meeting human development goals, okay, while simultaneously sustaining the ability of natural systems to provide natural resources and ecosystem services on which economy and society depend. So basically, it is just about sustaining natural system. Okay, we are consuming, but we will just try to sustain it. I consider it's a very instrumental way to look towards sustainable development. Okay, we are drawing something and we want to continue drawing something from nature. And if we can do that, then we are doing a sustainable development. Okay, so I treat it as a very instrumental definition. We are interested in our own benefits. Okay, it might be a very self-centered definition of sustainable development, but that is one of the perspective, as I already said. The other definition is sustainable development can be defined as a development that meets needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Now, here's one other aspect people considering, and that is about the generations to come. And I consider it's a wide definition. And if you try to assess all our development efforts considering this particular aspect, then I guess designing any development project will be very difficult, because we are thinking about generations to come. And then whatever you do, there will always be gaps. There will always be situations that you won't meet this particular criteria. Okay, so I consider it's a really good definition. It think about the larger duration, but it's equally doubtful whether we'll be able to qualify any of the development project if we treat this as a definition. Okay, any thoughts on these two aspects?
Sachin,
Yes.
I just tried to wrap my head around the whole thing in last 15 minutes, and the word in it, the term in itself, sustainable human development. So,
Yes.
the way we are trying to draw things from nature or natural resources,
Mm-hmm.
if we are talking about sustainable human development, then it is definitely going to be human centric, and it does not take into consideration the ability of the nature to
Mm-hmm.
provide us with the needs. So if we
Mm-hmm.
are talking about sustainable human development, then I think the whole concept does not take nature into consideration at all, because it is
Mm-hmm.
human development. It is not talking about I mean, it is asking how humans will be able to sustain or not.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe back then, if we look at the history, the way people, I mean, the way humans have progressed with a different challenge altogether,
Mm-hmm.
and they have come up with solutions in their own times which fit their interests. So
Mm-hmm.
in that process, they have come up with maybe natural solutions, alternative solutions, or technological advancements, or different means by which they could crack that one particular problem at in their time zone. Definitely
Mm-hmm.
have solutions which are visionary, but
Mm-hmm.
they humans have the put intellect to work and try to solve things out under sustainable human development. Definitely it is possible, but on the long
Mm-hmm.
run, we see they have extracted a lot from nature. So,
Mm-hmm.
and we do not know how much we have done to sort of restore the nature back. So
Mm-hmm.
that
Yes.
is one thing that I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
stuck there. Whether if we are
Mm-hmm.
talking about natural resources, how well we are sticking to the human development part, and if we are sticking to human development part, then are we even looking at the natural resources or not?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and then even people are looking at natural resources that will again be from the instrumental perspective, again to meet human needs, again to meet the human development expectations or goals.
Exactly. Yes. So they are not like, none of the species is thinking that I am eating or I'm consuming this part of the natural resource, and that I have to and I want to do some mass production and ensure that all of my people, all of my species gets this or not. Like, they are not on
Mm-hmm.
the on that side. They are not exploiting it.
Mm-hmm.
It is more, it is only in the human nature, and they want to fix the nature because they know they cannot do without it. So again,
Mm-hmm.
it is coming back to their own interest. So
Yes.
as long as
Yes.
this mindset is on the go,
Mm-hmm.
do not see we trying to be or fit in the process of sustainability as good as the nature is able to take care of itself.
Very much. Very much. It's a really good perspective to look towards it. So let's do one thing. Can we as we already have a various perspective about sustainable development, but and then those are like essential. We should have our perspective. We should have our uh, views about sustainable development. But the essential component is how does it contribute while designing a development project. Let's say if you're like just a very hypothetical example, if I realize that there are certain issues, let's say related to farming, for example. So I just want to make sure that the produce is not enough. So because of that, then farmers are not in position to meet their financial needs. And then for that purpose, as a, let's say, non-profit organization, I'm proposing some solution to state government. Okay, so if I take this particular example, and if I want to design some solution for that purpose, and I want to propose it to state government, then how can I consider this sustainability aspect during that particular design? Okay, you can choose any example. Let's take might be 3 4 5 minutes, and let's try to design something. Okay, so it will give us a clarity about this sustainability, about the human development, and then how we can work as a policy designer in this particular uh, in this particular domain. Okay, so you can take any example. In 5 minutes you just try to give a just brainstorm on how we can design some project and then propose it to state government. Okay, you can take example which I have given, but you can choose any other example as well. Okay, is it fine? Can we work on this?
Yes, Sachin, this is a nice idea. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's take 5 minutes. Yeah, so can we start by sharing something about your design? What do you think, how we can consider sustainability aspect in your project design? Who would like to share?
I think I'll allow
Yeah, please.
Avni to
Yeah,
go ahead.
please.
So, well, I have a very like long time span, but when we are trying to see the longer time span, um, things that the coming generation are going to face or go through is something that is not going to be in our vision. And so if there's a project that I would have, if say I pick up my field of having a better lifestyle, working on health. So the question then becomes, if we are trying to think like or be included in the processes and cycles of nature just like other species, the individuals of other species, they are not concerned about whether the other brother or the other friend is living or not. And the world, the humans, they think about millions and billions of people, as far as their like they have hierarchies and systems, and they have manufactured new programs and processes to streamline how the resources are going to be supplied to the other members of the species. So in this zone, the way humans have uh, built complexity to a level where each and everybody is interdependent on each other, that is what is sort of making it um, more difficult to understand what kind of policy we would be able to design if we are constantly thinking about giving service to the people in order to have sustainable human development. So, if we talk about health, a policy that may have good food, ensure a proper lifestyle that is in sync with nature, that is still, it is out of, I'm not able to sort of put it on one paper right now. And it is on a longer run, if we see,
Mm-hmm.
it is not something that is like that one point is coming in the way that if we are trying to get as close as nature is asking us to be, uh,
Mhm.
then why are we using the complexities of human intellect in order to, crack
Mhm.
these solutions? That
Mhm.
is where I'm
Mhm.
getting. Yeah.
Mhm. Yes, yes. So ultimately, you are proposing a lifestyle. So basically, let's say if you want to design a program from the health perspective, then
Yes.
you will basically come up with a solution which will be like very close to nature, what nature has to say. So in the sense like consuming something, let's say just following uh, sun life cycle, and then accordingly planning everything accordingly, adjusting our life. Then obviously then it does mean that we will get up early, we'll do all the other things. Then the consumption would also be it might be a vegetarian food which we will consume. So like there are various aspects
The
which will come
industry
into.
part is, yes, the industry part goes to a cut,
Exactly,
definitely.
exactly,
Yes, and that
exactly.
is where the mass production cannot happen. And when
Right.
mass production cannot happen, it cannot reach out to masses, which we have put up something that we are committed to sort of feed them. So
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
whole masses part takes a big cut. Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. And then surely I'll just come to this particular things again. But before that, I would like to listen Shrey or Vinod sir has to say something.
Yeah, Shrey has a good point, I think. Go ahead, Shrey.
Not that good a point. So actually, I was struck with the notion. Uh, Avni had said one thing, that sustainable human development. These three words and the entire definition of that does not
Mhm.
does not take into consideration nature currently,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So the example that I'm going to refer to is a little childish, because I'm going to refer to the movie Wall-E by Disney and
Huh?
Pixar.
Yes.
So in that movie, it was shown that uh, it was a very dystopian future where people were, they were literally growing fat and confined to a
Mhm.
particular chair, but they had
Mhm.
everything that they needed. Nutrition was getting, they were getting entertainment, they were getting sleep, they were getting everything that they want. So
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
a way, that was human development, right? But they did not
Mhm.
need to depend on nature for that.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that is
Mhm.
still sustainable human development if we go by this definition.
Right.
But nature
Right.
does not have a role to play on that. So
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
debatable where it comes in, because this definition, because nature is only one, as far as humans are concerned, nature is only one of
Mhm.
the factors that keeps us living. There are many
Mhm.
other factors that we can continue to live on if
Mhm.
we decide to forego nature. And
Right.
that thought is frightening. So,
Yes. Yes.
kind of
Yes.
that.
Yeah, 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 very much. I guess it's really an interesting example because ultimately uh, that particular movie that was also trying to show that there is a certain idealistic lifestyle which is required by every individual. So they were just trying to provide everything which one particular human may need. So it was all the healthcare system, all the entire entertainment, and whatever might people look for. They had
Yeah.
their own created definition of happiness, and we're also trying to provide solutions for that. So ultimately it is they had analyzed, so it was just at least trying to show that they had analyzed what human needs are, and all solutions were already provided. Still it violates the definition which Avni is trying to propose, that it should be closer to nature. So I was that was
Yeah.
completely against that particular one. That is the point, I guess, that particular movie was trying to highlight. So, with this discussion, I just want to bring your focus to one important other aspect. So, until now, we were thinking everything from the environmental perspective. So, let's try to bring in the sociology now. Now, let's assume a case whatever the best solution we are proposing, whatever the best design we are giving for human development, but humans are inherently segregated. We are having power structures in the society, and we are at different levels. Okay, even if we want it or we don't want it, even if we consider it right or wrong. Okay, but this is a reality. And then when this is a reality, then it has its outcome as well. In the sense, whatever access we are getting to things, that might be different. In the sense, let's assume a case which Avni was just trying to share, that she might propose a healthcare system which will be close to nature. Okay, but within that, if we look at from the sociological perspective, there are possibilities that every individual will not get equal access to natural resources because they are at different level in the power structure. Okay, and that was the case for long. In the sense, people were not even getting access to water. There were like certain people coming from certain caste were not allowed to access natural resource, that is water. Okay, similarly there are like a lot of other things as well. People do consider that certain certain caste might not get access to food as well. Okay, so even if we are designing a good project, okay, even if that project is really right, it is really sustainable, but sociology does play a role. Okay, and then whatever the best solution we provide, people will not get equal access to everything. They will be deprived due to certain other factors. And those other factors could be like one thing I just mentioned about the sociological aspect. Okay, environmental aspect we already discussed. There could be certain aspects which are at the personal level as well. In the sense, uh, for long, women were not ready to go out of their home and then roam independently or do some jobs out there. Okay, even though society accepted that, women had their research, the mental block was there because that is how they were like living for so many generations, and that knowledge, that particular thought process was transferred from one generation to the next generation, and because of that there was a mental block. Okay, so ultimately there were like a lot of personal factors as well which will restrict you from accessing the available opportunities. Even though the best uh, human development opportunities are available, people might not be in position to access it due to their personal limitations. Okay, so ultimately the best design will also keep people away if we fail to work on the personal factor, on the social factors, and on the environmental factors as well. Okay, and then obviously within this I'm also assuming about the system related aspects. Okay, if you recollect, we had discussion about these various factors when we were discussing about introduction to capabilities approach. Okay, so ultimately what I'm just trying to emphasize over here, uh, sustainable human development is essential for sure. Okay, everybody everybody thinks that uh, they do have different perspectives about sustainable development. Okay, their priorities might be different while thinking about sustainability. Using their perspectives, they may design a best solution for human development, but even after designing those best solutions, people might not get equal access to all the opportunities provided through those efforts. And those are because of the sociological aspects, those are because of the personal aspects, because of the social aspects, because of the environmental factors. Okay, uh, are you in sync until this particular point?
Yes, Sachin. And one more factor is, though we feel that there are certain indicators or certain things that humans feel this is the ideal lifestyle. But the
Mm-hmm.
moment we land up in that ideal lifestyle, we unfold some aspects which our human like maybe it is the genetic calling, or maybe it is core and it is intrinsically connected to us, that
Mm-hmm.
there are certain things that we will not be able to get away with. So,
Mm-hmm.
like with respect to the kind of example that Wally has been shown. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you currently mentioned that people were not ready to move out of caves, And
Mm-hmm.
once they did, the adventure part of them has kept them outside. So when
Mm-hmm.
the superficial, I mean the hypothetical situation of Wally is shown, they when they come back to Earth, the whole spirit of adventure and going out in on Earth, that in
Mm-hmm.
itself it lacks. So if in case we land up imagining our um, ideal life,
Mm-hmm.
there will be a part, and if even if we reach it, even if we make it there, there will be a part
Mm-hmm.
of us that will still be craving for what nature has to provide. And I think uh, with the current level of mindset that we have, it's difficult to know to what extent nature is trying to give us what it is trying to actually, and we are not able to see or even acknowledge or
Mm-hmm.
address.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And then when we are not sure, at least like through some experts, through different researches, or like drawing from some other countries' experiences, we do try to design something. Okay, so might be a sustainability policy, might be coming from some other nations. Okay, or internally we are doing a lot of research. Through that, we can just try to understand, because these questions are these are the big questions, and we don't have certain solutions to it. At least like based on some research we can predict, we can just uh, give a very informed guess, like what could be situation tomorrow, and then accordingly uh, we design our policies today. We design a law framework for that purpose, and then our recent efforts about changing the sustainability policy, some policies related to farming, so all those things are basically coming from there. Okay, so ultimately state has to play that particular role. Okay, they need to bring all the experts, they need to bring various opinions, various perspectives together, and they will have to design something for the larger good. They will have to visualize like what may happen in future, then accordingly they design policies today, and they make us abide to it. Okay, so let me give one simple example. Like if you remember, then India or certain countries like China, due to growing population, they had to made few rules, few policies, that nobody can have more than two children. Okay, so ultimately it is something what these two nations try to understand what could be the situation in future, and then accordingly they design policies right now, and then impose all those things on their citizens. Okay, so similarly from sustainability perspective as well, we do the same. So we just try to understand what might happen in the future, and accordingly we shape our current policies. Okay, so ultimately state has to play that particular role. Okay, while designing the policy, and then when you were designing policies, as an example we took, at that time, these are the aspects we are expected to consider. At least these are very few, but I consider like from today's discussion perspective, these are like the essential things. So first is to um, understand about the agency. Okay, so if we design any policy, we need to understand like what are the means, what are the resources, what are the assets we need to provide to the beneficiaries. Okay, so that is one important thing which state has to take care of. Okay, or if we are designing something for state, then we will have to consider this particular aspect. Second important thing which I was just trying to mention, that we may design a very good solution, but due to sociological aspect, there could be variation in accessing those opportunities. And then for that purpose, also state has to play a crucial role. They need to make sure that conversion factors are placed properly, so that every individual can get equal access to those opportunities. They should be in position to access it equally. Now, whether they want to utilize it, whether they want to convert those opportunities into their capabilities and then functioning, that might be a different story altogether. But providing the resources might not be sufficient. We need to assure the conversion factors are also in place. Okay. And then those could be sociological aspects, those could be environmental aspect, or those could be personal factors as well. And then when I say social factor, it basically mean let me take a very simple example. uh, a while back I was mentioning about the a caste system, and because of that, people coming from certain caste were not allowed to access water from whale, for example. Okay, now in that particular case, state's role would be to make sure that every individual can go and access the things. Every individual can go and access the resources equally. Now, whether people want to go and bring water from there and then consume it and then keep better health. So all those things are like the individual factors. People can decide it by themselves. But state's responsibility would be to make sure that individuals are in position to go and access it. Let me take another example. In the sense, like uh, as a citizen, we are free and we are allowed to go anywhere. So there was an issue earlier that like women were not allowed to go to certain temples. Okay, now in that particular case, state's role is to make sure that women are allowed to go and access those temples. Now how they want to worship, what they want to do, okay, and then whether women really want to go over there or not is their issue. But state responsibility is to make sure that opportunities are provided equally to every citizen. Okay, so when we design policies, when we design development sector project, these are the few aspects we need to make sure. Okay, and then ultimately what I am basically emphasizing on the last point, that is state hold power. Okay, that power come through constitution. Okay, and then the various machineries are provided to exercise that particular power. And state's responsibility would be to make sure that everybody get equal access. Okay, and then last line is very important. It is talking about the effective power. What does it mean? It basically means that state will not authorize any individual to control everything. Okay, providing power, okay, making sure that everybody has power does not mean that they will exercise something independently. It does not mean that. It just means that there is a effective power, in the sense they will get power to do whatever they want to do. But that does not mean that one individual will control everything. So it is not about the power given to any certain individual, but it is about making sure that every individual have certain power, effective power, okay, a possibility to exercise something. Okay, and then state using their power can assure that effective power for all the individuals. uh, are you with me?
Yes, Sachin.
Yes.
And there was this one point that I had with respect to applying policies, like understanding policy making and then applying it. For example, geographical terrain in this case matters a lot, because a population that resides in a geographical area, that geography is capable of handling that population. But
Mhm.
when people sort of like they migrate to a place where it is highly densely populated, that is when I think the complexities or the complications they start to arise.
Mhm.
And they a habitat is formed, and an individual, for example, people from south and people from the middle of India, their
Mhm.
bodies are trained to be in a certain habitat, and when they are trying to migrate,
Mhm.
the whole thing about how their bodies are responding to the surroundings in
Mhm.
the new area changes
Mhm.
completely. The food changes, and the way their bodies are responding changes. So
Mhm.
it's maybe it's not only with respect to the physical, or on the health perspective. But I guess there are other factors with respect to mental and psychological factors as well, and how well that person will be able to cope up. So that
Mm-hmm.
geographical terrain is also one major thing. Like policy, if they are made on a certain level, the
Mm.
same policy cannot be applied everywhere.
Yes.
So if something is decided on a national level, for example, if it is uh, if it is decided that everybody should get minimum of two rotis, and the state does not have the capacity. I mean,
Mm.
maybe it
Mm.
is possible that some people may be fine with one roti, the ones who have sedentary lifestyle,
Mhm.
but
Right.
people who work hard, they may require 4 to 5 rotis. So that
Yes.
thing, even on the nutrition level, it
Mm.
will be challenging to decide on a very on a higher level. So I guess only state to state, or maybe
Mm.
to an extent district to district, is possible that the call for these kind of policies are made.
Right. Right. And then
That's
if we,
one
uh,
perspective, I
yes.
guess.
Yeah. And this particular perspective comes from the capitalist approach. Actually, if we like treat that particular theory as a base, then even district might not be a good unit. What Amartya Sen has to say is that like these things change according to individual, and then individual capability is dependent on like what they feel, what they consider, uh, what they consider their needs are, and those should be provided. And policies should be sufficient. State should be in position to provide all those aspects. So I may feel that like one chapati is sufficient for me, the other might not feel so, and then accordingly these two individuals, even they are living in the same home, they might be having very different requirement, they were having very different expectations, and then we need to provide that. That is what capitalist approach has to say. And I consider that is the whole debate is all about, in the sense like how will we design policy there. So policy is all about like this kind of provisioning, in the sense like providing resources, but at the same time making sure that every individual like getting resources, access to resources as per their needs, but at the same time making sure that people are not drawing uh, without ignoring others. And that is the whole idea. So ultimately the effective power is basically talking about the very same aspect, that if we may provide equal access to opportunities, but what if people start drawing uh, even if they don't need it? That is what people do. Okay, I've seen people like going to temples, and then if prasad is like offered free of cost, they don't mind bringing like 2-3 cups of prasad with them, right? Now I'm not against that particular practice. That's like individual's choice. But the point I'm trying to highlight is like people may sometimes get ignorant about others' needs. They are not sure. They are not thinking whether like others will need it or not. If there's something extra and then it's going to dustbin, then obviously I don't mind people taking it to their home. Okay, but who will decide that? State may think about providing resources, it may think about the conversion factors. Okay, but about like how people will maintain the hierarchy, how state will make sure that like people at the higher level at the hierarchy are drawing it more than their needs or not. Okay, and that is where we need collectives. There are certain things which state cannot dictate, which state cannot direct. Okay, there are limitations because state at a very higher level, and they are not having access to every individual in that sense. Okay, so let's say if that is the situation, then can we create closed groups, or rather those get created automatically as well? Okay, if those groups start controlling things, then it will be better. then that collective will have their own vision, they will have their own value system, and that collective will define everything. Okay, so if I go to certain temples, for example, okay, there are certain practices in Maharashtra. So we go to during one particular month, we go to temples early morning. Okay, and then when I go to different temples, there are different practices people follow, right? So few of them might be having certain value system, in the sense um, how to distribute things over there. So one of the temple might be having practice that everybody stand in the line and then collect it. There might be another temples in which the practices are that elders will get access to things, access to prasad or any other material before others. So they don't need to stand in line. They can just directly come and get access to it. Okay. So in other temples, the priorities might be given to women. Then male and woman would have separate lines. Okay, and then they separate queues in the sense, and then they will get access to material over there. Okay, so what I'm just trying to say over here is that collectives define, okay, the practices over there. They will have certain practices for their own group. Those will come through their value system, what they consider good life for them. Okay, if you go to masjid, for example, they do have their internal practices. Okay, and then even if at the larger level practices are same, but every masjid might be different. If you see it like minutely, they might be having very different practices. Those group come together, brainstorm on certain things, and then decide their own practices. It's really based on their own value system. So every group basically have certain value system, and those value system will drive everything. Okay, so when state is not in position to control everything, group do have that capability. Collectives can define certain things. Collective capabilities might give equal access to every individual, and that would be contextual as well, because group will be having access to all the opinions over there, right? So ultimately, state can design things at certain level, but beyond that, collectively, people can decide certain things for themselves. And those things flow from generation to generation. And those vary according to the nature of the group, the leadership, which is like driving that particular group, kind of value system they do have. Okay. And then a lot of other factors which will drive everything. But ultimately, those things will be localized. So basically, here we are thinking about two levels. So one is where state direct the things. So state design policies, they design law frameworks, and those will be mandatory for every individual to follow. Secondly, we are discussing about a very contextual, localized solution where like people come together and think about something, they design something. Okay, so now how it is important from the policy designing perspective, how it is important from the development sector professional perspective. It is essential when you are designing any solution, any program you are designing, any project you are designing for human development. At that time, you need to think it from these two perspectives. One is something you need to design at the local level. You need to understand the group dynamics, and then accordingly you need to design something. But secondly, you also need to make sure that whatever those localized practices, those should influence the policies, so that the other groups, the overarching groups, should be in position to benefit from those local practices. If there's something good happening at the local level, then people should get inspired from that, and it should be applicable to all other groups. And that is how the bottom-up policies designing work. So we do try something in a specific context. We let those practice mature for a certain time. Okay, we understand the nuances, we document all those things, and based on that, we do the policy recommendation. If state find it important, if they think that it can be applicable to other contexts, it can be redesigned and then implemented in other locations, Then state basically take that particular call and then they implement it over there. So one very good example is today's Anganwadis, for example. So those today's Anganwadis were also collective efforts at certain localities over here. Okay, in Maharashtra, there were like a certain vastis, a small, remotely, distantly placed localities, and they were not having access to education. And for that purpose, people thought like we should do something. People came together, they just executed certain programs for those distantly placed locations. And then, as there was no infrastructure, they decided to do it in their porch, okay, in the open area in front of their houses. And in Marathi, we call it Angan. And from there, that particular terminology comes called Anganwadi. Okay. And then, when that particular model matured over here, people started practicing it diligently. They documented the outcome, and then when it was beneficial, people found that like it can be implemented in other locations. Then basically state owned that particular idea, and then we designed one department called ICDS, and then ICDS is actually implemented it throughout the nation. So that is how collective is important, and that is how bottom up policy designing may work. Designing will always be at two level, at the national level, at the state level, okay, the secondly at the local level. And that is how I consider like this is what this particular article has to argue about, that collectives is important. State will not be always in the position to provide everything, and then local group has to come together. They will have to design their own practices, and they will have to make sure that every individual get equal access, and they should be in position to draw according to their needs. Okay, with this I'll stop, and I would like to listen your thoughts about this. Are you with me? Like,
Yes, Sachin, and I think this was a very good like analogy of a state picking up a model from something that has come from collectives, and when that happens, and when collectives come up with a model that is scalable, that is where the most important part enters, where whether a model is scalable or not. And once that happens, then it is able to reach out, and most of it is like the details can rest with the individual states, but a structure is important, wherein the details can fit in and it can be customized according to the requirements of the population it is trying to serve. So, as far as Anganwadi is concerned, yes, it is. It was a successful model. As far as uh, other domains are concerned, I do not know how it is going to be made possible. I mean, it is also trying to make food and nutrition work through it as well. Uh, just that when the state or when it reaches up to a power structure, and there are influences of the capitalist groups, uh, that is where it is getting hindered, and the effectiveness or the outcome that it is supposed to receive, it does get hampered. But yeah, so that is one more flavor that is there in it, and
yes.
that is something that again, wherever there is higher, wherever there is hierarchy and there are layers, that is when the whole thing starts to crash down, and
Yes, yes.
so that is one major thing that I get stuck with.
Yes, yes. So you already like I guess like setting agenda for our next discussion. We'll surely continue from here, because then it basically differentiates between the collective capabilities and collective abilities. So this distinction
Right.
is made because of the point you are raising, because collectives might not always turn up in the positive way. There are negative aspects to it as well, and we will just discuss all those things, and rather let's start our next discussion with these very same point, and then we'll continue. There are like few aspects which we haven't discussed, and then in tomorrow's session we will just try to close this particular discussion about collectives and sustainability, and we'll also try to understand how it is important to consider the negative aspects as well. So all those
Right.
things we'll discuss in the next session then.